At that time, there was, Prince was doing his thing at First Avenue. It was around the time they were filming Purple Rain. There was an awareness there. Their actual contact wasn't that much. I don't know how many. I'm assuming a lot of people have read the book, but the famous meeting between Paul and Tommy occurred at a urinal in a club in St. Paul. Or Paul and Prince occurred at a urinal in St. Paul, and Paul was, doing what you do at a urinal, and here comes Prince dolled up in his, purple finery, and Paul said to Prince, "Oh, hey man, what's up?" And Prince, in Prince fashion, said, "Life." And then walked out. They did. Their replacements did actually work. They were, relatively speaking, I think one of the first bands to work at Paisley Park, Prince's studio in is it GS?
Yes.
When they started, and they started doing some overdubs and mix work on "Don't Tell a Soul." And as the story goes, they had this beautiful console that had just been refurbished. It was, God knows, probably at that point $300,000-$400,000 console. And Paul walked in with a tumbler of Jack Daniels and spilled it the first thing, And so I remember Paul saying, their producer Matt Wallace saying, he's like, the look on this tech's face as the sticky brown liquid is just going into the console with something else. And then I think they raided Prince's refrigerator and secret candy stash a couple times, and then they could hear him clacking his heels coming down. They all ran. But Prince actually knew Westerberg's sister, who some of you may or may not know is a big DJ in Minneapolis on The Current there, Mary Lucia. And so I think the only other thing that Prince probably said to Paul was, when they were working at Paisley Park, he said, "Say hi to your sister for me," which I don't know how I would take that if Prince was talking about my sister in those tones, but they really loved him. There's a quote in the book, and Paul talks about the sense of showmanship that they had, although sort of different, but the sense of exaggerated showmanship in some ways was rooted in a kind of reaction to what were at times very staid Minneapolis audiences, like "show me, prove it to me." As Paul said, it can be a cold place in more ways than one. So I think the excesses or the extravagance of their showmanship are probably rooted in a similar place, and the mistrust, I think, of the music business too. The replacements the replacements weren't very proactive in their mistrust of the music business. They didn't get their masters back. I mean, they dumped them, but they didn't get them back. Whereas Prince, sort of fought the good fight for that stuff. So yeah, they had some similarities and some smaller experiences. But they took replacements are really weirdly regional people. When Bob left the band, they were going to replace him with some hotshot guitar player from this place or that place. But it's it had to be somebody from Minneapolis. They couldn't deal, and they had a kind of real sense of regional identity and pride. And so there's a scene in the book where Rick Ocasek was watching Prince play at First Avenue, I think in '84. The cars were at their kind of pop peak, and I described it in the book. Tommy is standing there, and I guess Rick Ocasek was, he's a big, skinny guy, but he's wearing this big, 80s jacket. And I guess Tommy kept poking in his jacket just to see where his body was, so big. And then at some point in the show, they're watching Prince play from the wings, and Prince does this thing where he just does this Hendrix-like guitar solo behind his head, spins around, throws the guitar, does a split, and comes out of the split, grabs the guitar again and plays. And Tommy's looks at Rick Ocasek and goes, "Let's see you top that, buddy." So yeah, there was some crossover, and the weirdest thing is the guy drummer who might have been in the replacements had it not been Chris was this guy I mentioned, Kevin Patrick, who played in Maserati. Maserati was a Prince band that actually was the original ones that recorded Kiss, the song Kiss, and he was a great drummer, and he was kind of in that Prince world, but he was best friends with Paul and neighbors with Paul growing up. So then, there's not a really deep connection other than, just the kind of hometown thing. So.
Approach this however you want. I'm curious for both of you, what's your favorite replacement song, album, part of their art, and why?
Do you want me to go ahead so you can think? I grew up on Tim. I still have my cassette of Tim that I used to drive around in my car. I am partial to Hootenanny because I think that's kind of the transitional record. There's a lot of stuff I love about that. But I love all their records in a way because I think they do kind of stand alone, and especially now knowing the book, and I hope that's the thing that people get out of the book too, is a kind of different appreciation for the music because some of these backstories and things. Don't Tell a Soul is obviously the one that's most maligned because of the mix, and again, that's something that we're hoping eventually to sort of fix with an original proper mixed version of that. So hopefully my favorite recording will be the ones that no one's heard yet, and it'll be out eventually.
Don't Tell a Soul Naked.
Don't Tell a Soul Naked, that's what we're going to call it. Not really, we're going to call it anyway.
Mine is probably Let It Be, in part because growing up in Minneapolis, I have a very vivid memory of, older, this is like 1990, 91, and so, pre-internet, you were really dependent on older punks for all of your information. I worked at a record store, and so I thought I really had, the line on it, but, everybody of a certain age, it was always, dudes would tell you, they're like, yeah, they shot that on my roof. And it was or that was the thing that some dude ostensibly would be like, let me take you to go show you the roof where they shot this, and that was that was kind of like a Minneapolis pickup line. But so I just have this very distinct memory, of being in a